All right, I am like sweating here because every video so far I thought was going to be like 20 minutes and it ended up being closer to an hour. So I hope you guys are feeling that these videos are actually including information that you actually care about and it's not just me going way too into detail. I'm sure I will find out in the comments. But for those of you who are just joining, my name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking. And in the last video, we looked at how we can query on our Firestore database. So we did filtering, and sorting at the same time. And that was great. And the primary use case for that is when our database starts to get really large, right? When we have a lot of documents in our database that we don't want to download them all at once. Instead, we want to query on a subset of the documents in our database. And that's great, but that doesn't cover every single use case. And there are additional ways to deal with basically this same problem. And that's what we're going to look at in this video. So specifically, we're going to jump into pagination and limits on these queries. So firstly, what are limits? Limits are basically like if I wanted to send out a query, right now, we're going to fetch all the documents that fit that query. A limit would say, give me the first 5 documents that fit that query. So that's what we're going to start with here. And then we're going to jump into pagination, which is basically after I get those first documents, now I want to get the next 5 documents. And after that, I want to get the next 5 documents. And so that's used for much more like the Instagram feed. So as you scroll through the feed, Instagram's not loading an infinite list of posts. They're loading the first bunch of posts. And then when you get to the bottom, they're going to load the next bunch of posts and then the next bunch of posts. And that's exactly what we're going to learn how to do in this video.
All right, welcome back everybody. We are back. We're in our Xcode project. We have our Firebase project set up. In the last video, we looked at filtering and sorting. Getting a little more advanced now, we're going to look at limiting data. And so basically what that means is limiting the number of items that are returned in your request. Now, for our case right now, in our app, if we look at our database, the products collection only has 30 items. So fetching all those 30 items is a very small request when you compare it to like a large application. If there's a million documents here, that would be a very large request. So realistically in our app right now, we don't really have a problem where we need to limit data. Obviously, we want to prepare for larger applications and like real world use cases where we might have a million items in this products collection. And in that case, when we do a fetch request, we don't want to get every single item that hit the query. We want to get maybe the first 20 items that hit the query. And then as the user scrolls down, maybe we'll add more items. Right? This is kind of like if you're on a website and you're looking for some product, right? There's a page 1 and then there's a page 2 and then there's a page 3. It's kind of the same thing. They could theoretically load all of the pages onto one web page, but it's going to slow down the loading of the page. And it just adds a little more complexity because that fetch request is larger now. You have to download more data. So it's better to break it up into smaller queries, basically. It's going to be a little bit more efficient. So we have our app here where if I just run it, I think right now, the origin state is just going to fetch all items. Yeah, this is our fetch all items request, right? So if we have no filters on or no sorting, it's just getting us all items. Cool. All right, so right now we have this query of getting all products. So if I look at that code and I go to our products manager, our get all products is literally just go to the collection and get all of the doc, right? And so how do we limit the number of documents that we get? Well, with Firestore, it's actually extremely simple. We can literally say just .limit. And we can add in limit to how many items do we want. So for a second, I'm just going to include a limit of 5 here. And let's run our app. So this function is going to run when we launch our app. It's going to go to that collection. This is the query, which is basically just any any document in the collection. And then it's going to say, give me the first 5 that fit this query, the first 5 items that it finds basically, and return. So we can see here now we did the same fetch request except 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're only getting those 5 items back. So that's simple, and we shortened our query. I'm going to actually delete that now because we don't really want it in our code. Let's look at the one where we do it just by price, right? So we set this up in the last video where we go to the products collection, we sort them all by price, and then we return it. And so when we run that query, I think it's when I change this to price high, it's going to give us all of the documents that fit that query sorted by price. And we can do the same thing here. So after we sort them, let's limit it to the first, maybe let's do 3. And that should work. Let's change our filter so that we use the product sorted by price here. And we got the first 3. So the first 3 fitting that filter, so the highest priced one, right? But you'll also notice that we can do limit to last. And if we do the last 3, so now we're going to sort the collection by price so that the highest price is first, which is what we're asking it to do. But we're telling us then give it the last 3, which will end up being the lowest 3 prices, right? So a little different query here. If I do this again, price high, but it's going to give us the lowest 3 still sorted by price high, right? So 13, 13, and then 12. So we can limit our queries to the first or to the last X amount of objects. And of course, if this was your actual app and you wanted to limit it, you would probably pass in an amount here, like a limit amount, right? And then you would inject it into the function. All right, I'm going to delete that again because we don't actually want that in our code. But now we know how to limit data at a very simple level. And now let's look at a couple more complex examples. All right, so we are going to, for a second, just ignore basically all the work we did in the last video. And let's just go back to our product view and add another screen here. And let's just add a new button so that we can play around with it. I'm going to actually delete all this bulk code that we no longer are using. Cool. I recognize right now that this probably shouldn't have been filtered. It's probably more of a sort. We're sorting by price high and price low. I don't know why I called it filter. I think I maybe had something else in mind, but just leave it as filter for now. All right, so we have all of our products. Our first query is a fetch all. And let's come down here. At the top of our list, let's just add a button real quick, just for example's sake. Let's use the completion with a title, and let's just say fetch more object. And we're going to write a function here to fetch object. All right, when we load the view right now, let's actually not get all the products. So I'm just going to comment this out. And we're just going to use this fetch more objects for a couple seconds. All right, let's go back to our product manager, and we're going to create a new function in here called, put it below our get all products. This function we're going to do for just this example, and then we're not going to actually use it in the rest of the videos because it's not going to like connect to all these other functions that we made. Let's just do a func. We'll say get products by rating. All right, and what we want to do is get a certain amount of products that match the rating. So we'll say count, which is basically going to be the limit. And of course, this will be asynchronous, throw and return an array of product. All right, so just like our other ones, we are going to try await products collection. And this time we are going to sort, just like we did before with the sorting by price, except this time we are going to sort by rating. So if we look on the screen here, we have the ratings. It's like 4.5, 4.2, 4.5. I don't know what it's out of. Maybe it's out of 5, maybe it's out of 10. We're going to sort so that it's descending, meaning the highest ratings come in first, the lowest ratings come in last. All right. And then, of course, we want to convert them to an array of product. So we'll get product. But before we get all of the products sorted by rating, let's actually limit it to the number that we want here. So we're going to add in a limit of the count. All right. So very simple, same thing. Products collection, sort it by rating, give us the first X. Let's go back to our products view. Let's create another function in the view model called get products by rating. And we're going to say self.product equals, let's just copy this, equals try await products manager share get products by rating. And let's just do the first maybe 4. And this is asynchronous rapid in a quick task here. And let's call this from our button. All right, view model, get products by rating. All right, I think it's going to work on the canvas, so we can just work off the canvas for now. Cool. All right, so our screen loads, we get no objects. Now let's get them by rating. I'll click this and boom. All right, so we said rating descending, meaning the highest rating should be first, and we see that already. 4.9, 4.9, 4.8, 4.85. Right, so rating is going down. This is exactly what we want. We said limit it to the first 4. And now we want to say, all right, we got this. Let's now get the next 4 in this query. How do we do that? Well, if we click this button again, it's going to run the exact same query, right? So I'm going to fetch more objects. And I guess it's setting products equal to the result. So it's actually the same. So if we change this to actually say, let new product equals the result of this, and we say self.products.append new products, we can now test out adding, sorry, this is contents of, we can now test out adding products to our fetch, right? So let's fetch this, we get those 4, and now let's do another one to get the next 4, and we're going to notice that the same 4 objects, so this one and this one, are the exact same, right? So we have a little bit of an issue here because we refetched the products and we wanted the next 4 to fit the query, but we actually got the same 4 because we ran the exact same query. So how do we make sure that our query starts where the last one ended? And so let's go back to our products manager. And in this function, so we're going to get them order, we're going to limit to that amount. But what we want to add is basically where it should start counting this limit, right? So right now, if we get all of these objects and we say, get us the first 5, it's just going to be the first 5 in this query. But really we want the first 5 after the last query that we sent. And so now we can use this keyword .start. And so we're going to say, basically, you're going to limit it, but we want you to start at a certain document. And so, for example, if we say start at, well, we know the ratings are this number here, right? All right, and let's say maybe start at, so we're going from the highest rating to the lowest rating. We saw that it was like out of 5, so let's say maybe start at 4.5. All right, so maybe we want to exclude the ones that are from 5.0 to 4.5. And we'll run our function one more time. Let's build the app real quick. And so when we do this fetch request, it's going to start at 4.5. So we're still doing by the highest rating, but anything above 4.5 is now excluded. So this use case isn't exact, but imagine like you're on maybe Amazon, right? And you want to say, give me products sorted by highest price between $50 and $100, right? And so here you would do order by price and then start at maybe $100, right? So anything above $100 would be excluded from that query. But still, even with this doesn't help our problem. If we fetch again, it's going to give us the same result. And so really what we want here is actually a start after. And we can say start after a specific number. And so when we think about our queries now, the first query, whatever we do, if we just say limit to the first 3, it's going to give us the highest 3 priced. And then at the end of that query, the last item in that query will obviously have a rating. And we're going to want to say start after the rating of the last item in the last query. And so we're going to say up here, we're going to add a last rating of type. I think it's a double. And we'll make it optional in case we don't have it. And so in here, I'm going to now put in the last rating. And if we don't have a last rating, we need to give it a default value. This is not an optional function here. So I'm going to give it a default value of just like 9 million or something. So basically, if there is no last rating, we're going to start at the highest price ever, which is 9 million, which in the actual product is like 5. But this is kind of just like a catch-all to default if we don't have a last rating. All right, so now we just need to update our get products by rating. And so we're going to come down here, and our function is going to yell at us. Get products by rating. All right, this time let's do limit. Let's do 3 maybe. And what is the last rating? Well, when we first fetch, it's going to be nil. But after we fetch once, right, we append all the products to the products array. And so the last rating must be the last item in the products array. So then we can just say self.product. So we can just reference self.products dot last item dot rating. So the last item in the products array, and whatever the rating of that is, let's start after that. Let's open up our canvas real quick. I think it'll work on the canvas. Let's fetch some more objects. We got our top 3 here, sorted by price, or sorted by rating. And now, when we click this again, it should pass in the products.last.rating. So the products, 1, 2, 3, this is the last one, and the rating is 4.87. So it should say start after 4.87 in your next query. And let's fetch, and you'll see that now we got the next object, and this is awesome. This is a perfectly good way to basically start paginating your data. One caveat though of this approach is that you could theoretically run into a situation where the rating is the same on multiple objects. So for example, the last object was 4.87, and then when we did our next query, we said start after 4.87. But what if there was another product that was exactly 4.87? We would have missed it in between these two queries because we said start after this number and when it was actually equal to this number, right? So there's a slight, realistically, probably low chance of happening, but there is that potential when you do this approach. So this start after, we got to think about really, how specific is this? Of course, the user has no idea if you're missing a product here, so it's probably not the end of the world. And now we can just continue fetching more objects, right? And it's going to keep going after the last rating until we get all the way down, probably to the end of the document. But yeah, this is working perfectly. This is awesome. Let's jump back into our product manager. All right. So then the final question becomes, well, how do we ensure that we don't miss, a document in between these two fetches? Well, instead of manually saying start after a specific value, we can actually just say start after the last document that you fetched in the query. And so let's set that up now. So how do we do that? Let's go back into our products manager and look at this function. What I'm going to do is copy and paste another one just so that we have a reference to how this function works. We're going to start using this one now. So get products by rating again, count. But this time we're going to change what we're injecting here as the last. Instead of the last rating, we're going to say last document. Okay? And so here, instead of start after a specific number, we're going to say start after. And we can say start at a specific document or after a specific document. And what we're going to do is after, because we're going to pass in the last document. All right, so after a document, it looks like we need to pass in a document snapshot. So I'm going to make this a document snapshot that we're injecting into the function. So I will pass in the last document here. Now, of course, last document that we're passing is optional because in our first query, we're not going to have a last document before we have any. So this is actually not an optional argument here. So let's actually just switch. Let's actually do a quick if statement. We'll say if let last document. If we do have a last document here, we'll run this query and we'll say else, and we'll just do the regular query if we don't have a last document. So we'll get the first 5 and then we'll get the first 5 after a specific document. All right, and we just need to add the return keyword on both of these. We should be to go. The problem that we're going to have now is that after we return back to our application with this function, right, the app needs somehow to know what the last document was. And we're not passing in document snapshots back to our app. We're just passing in products. So now we need to alter this getDocuments function to return not only the array of products, but what was the last document from that query. And so we're going to come down to our getDocuments function. And what we're going to do is actually just copy and make another one because I don't want to mess up the first one. Most of our queries will not require us to get the last document, so this will still be valid. But we're going to add another function that says getDocuments with snapshot. So it's going to get all the documents again, but it's also going to give us back the last document snapshot. And so when we return a value from this function, let's return the array, and let's also return a document snapshot, which we'll make optional. All right, so this is now a tuple with an array and the document snapshot. And let's be a little more explicit in this code because it's going to get a little confusing now. So we have this is returning the array that is a result of this. And so let's just actually call this products again. We'll say let products equal this. And then we're going to return the product. And now we need to also find the last document in the snapshot. And so the snapshot, we can see the snapshot has an array of documents. So we can very simply call snapshot documents last. The last document in that snapshot. It's exactly, word for word what we're looking for. And while we are here, I am now noticing that, the code here is basically the same as the code here. And we can leave this separate and it's totally fine. But we can also now condense some of this code and just have this function reference this function and maybe just not return the document snapshot. So what we can do, I'm going to copy and paste this, comment the first one out. What we can do here is just actually we'll say let, and call this function. So we'll say this is the array of product and the last document equals try-await getDocument with snapshot. And we're going to pass in type from here, type. And then, of course, we just want to return the product. And we're not going to use the last document that comes back here. So we can just put an underscore there to make the error go away. All right. And if we really want to get fancy here, just to kind of show how cool Swift is, we can even one-line this, right? So instead of getting the products, returning the products, we can just return the result of this function. And of course, we only want to return the first value in this tuple. So we can say .0 for the first value that comes back from it. And if we want to get even better, we can make it so that instead of saying .0, we can give a name to this, right? So we have this tuple, and let's just call this product, and let's call this last doc. And now, when I go to call this, I can look and see that we're going to get the product. Pretty cool stuff. I think this code is looking awesome. So up here in our code, get products by rating, we want to return that last document. So we're going to call get products with snapshot as product.self. Put that down here as well. And we want to return that same tuple. So I'm going to copy this, paste it up here. We're going to get an array of product and a last document, which is an optional document snapshot. Pretty cool stuff. Let's call this function now from our app. We can go back to the products view. Let's call our new function. So I'm going to comment out our first one. And this function is going to say let, and we're getting new product as well as the last document. We'll set it equal to try-await product manager shared get products by rating. We'll use the last document one. Let's get the first three and the last document. So when we get these last documents now in our query, just make this full screen. When we get this document, we want to just store a reference to it somewhere. So let's just put it up in our class here. We're just going to create a variable. We're just going to create a quick variable, and we'll make it private. We'll say private. We'll create a private var, and we'll call it last document of type document snapshot, which we don't have access to here. So we will maybe import Firebase Firestore, I think, document snapshot, set it equal to nil. And so now when we call this function, we're just going to pass in whatever is in that last document. And after we get the last document, we're just going to set self.lastDocument equal to this last document. All right, let's run our app. I think we can just do it in the canvas quick. Refresh this. While we're waiting, I will note that in a larger application, you might want to create some sort of local type to hold a document snapshot so that if you're using this on a lot of screens, you don't have to import Firebase every time. Like you can make a struct that is like my, I don't know, snapshot container, my query holder kind of thing, and then put the document snapshot inside so that when you initialize the struct, you import Firestore and you have this reference, but then you don't need to import it on every screen that has one of those objects. We're going to keep it simple and just leave this for now. Anyway, all right, fetch more objects, and we got the first three, so that's still working. Fetch it again, and we're going to get the next three. Now, we didn't run into that error. Obviously, we're getting the same results that we just got, but this time is a little bit more safer because we're actually passing in the last document from the previous query, which is awesome. All right, a couple more things before we wrap up this video. We are going to actually revert back to our origin where we were just sorting by price and we had a filter on category. So I'm going to get products by rating. We're going to comment it out. This button that we made for this video, I'm just going to delete. And when we load our screen, let's get all products again like we were in the original session. And what we're going to simulate now is basically, some kind of natural pagination that you might have on your home screen. So let's say, obviously again, it's only 30 items, but we're going to pretend like there's a ton more. And let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's say about 10 items is probably good for the first query. All right, and so what we're going to do is come to our function here. So when we filter and we run category, all of that is going through the get all product function. So get all products, and then it switches to all these different possible endpoints. All right, and so we're going to take our code to a bit of the next level here. So all of these functions now, these original ones, are private, meaning we're only accessing them from inside this class, and they're all coming through here, right? And so this one's returning an array of product, this one's returning an array of product, this one's returning an array of product, and so is this. And you'll notice that if we look at all of these, there's a lot of overlap between them in terms of this line is the same, this line's the same, this line's the same. So really what they're all doing is creating a query, and then whatever that query is, getting all documents as product. So we're going to change these functions a little bit now so that we can streamline some of the queries, so that we can streamline some of the modifiers on any of these. All right. So what we're going to do is basically just copy all 4 of these functions. I'm going to comment them out just so we have them in our code. I'm going to paste them down here. And let's just say get all products query. We're going to make this all products sorted by price query, category query, price and category query. And we're just going to return the query. So we're going to delete these get documents calls from each of these functions. All right, now it cannot convert type of query to return type product. And so this one up here says we can't return type collection reference. A couple videos back, we looked at what a collection reference is. It actually inherits from query. So we're going to return here query. We're going to do the same for all of these functions. We're just going to return the query. We're not going to actually fetch the products inside this function. And since we're just returning the query and we're not actually doing the fetch, we can get rid of our try await. We can get rid of our async throws because it's actually just going to return us the query. And then when we call it, it's going to potentially throw the error. Here we can get rid of this as well. Get rid of this as well. This. Our code's super condensed here. Hopefully these errors go away. Cool. All right, so now in our function here, this one's going to be asynchronous and throws, because in this function, we're going to actually execute the query. And so no matter what, there should be a default query, which will be the get all products query. So I'm going to rewrite this function. At the top here, I'm going to say var query of type query, and we're going to set it equal to get all products query. All right, so that's our starting state. But then we're going to do our little if else statement here. And so if we have descending and category, then we're going to set this query equals get all products by price and category. All right, and we're going to do the same thing for the next one. So if we have just descending, query is going to equal this query, and then the query is going to equal, and then the query here, the query again will equal. So we'll add in query, and query, need this. All right, so we're going to try to we're going to have that default query, then we're going to check it if we need to change it to a different query. And now when we get down here, we're going to have that query. And now we're going to call get documents as product.self. And of course, product.self, of course, we want to return the result of this, which now we're going to fetch it. So we need to try, oh wait, sorry, this is just get documents, the snapshot right now. All right, let's make sure this still works before we move forward. I'm going to build and run the app real quick. All right, and it looks like it still works. We got all of our objects. Let's try a filter. Sorted by price high, awesome. Sorted by fragrances, awesome. Still working, perfect. Price going down. Yeah, perfect, awesome. All right, now what this is going to open us up to do now is that we have, no matter what we're fetching, we have this one location where we can edit the query, which is going to be great because now we can add in a limit. So just like we did here, a count. Pass in a count up here. So how many we want to fetch in each query. So we can do a limit here, and we're going to limit to the count, just like we did before. So now, no matter which of these we're going to do, it will have that limit, right? So we didn't have to, we could have instead passed the count from here into each of these functions, and then each of these functions could have had a limit, and you could have put a limit in here and a limit in here. I think this is a little bit easier to work with now because it's just one location for our code. Let's fix this. So where are we calling this in our code? I think we have a get all product. It should say count. Let's just start with, I think we said 10 is a good number. To run it again. All right, we got the first 10. And now what we want to do is basically if the user scrolls down the screen and gets to the last one, we want to automatically fetch the next 10. So we'll save ourselves on that initial query because we only need the first couple objects, right? There's no sense in fetching 200 objects right now if the user's only going to see the first 10. So we can just see the first batch. And when the user gets to the bottom, we'll automatically get the next batch. If you use like Seamless, I think Grubhub, they have basically this when you go through the restaurants that you can order from. You'll notice that if you get to the end, you'll see a spinner and it'll start loading more. And so how do we do this now? Of course, we want to pass in our start after last document approach. So again, what we're going to do is take our last document, pass that into this function as well. We're going to take this tuple of products and last document and pass and make that what's returned out of this product. That's returned out of this function. And we're going to take our other get documents with snapshot and replace our regular get documents here. So now we're going to return that snapshot from this whatever query back to our application. All right, and come back to products view. This is now going to give us, going to be more like this. So we'll say new products last document. And we'll pass in the last document, which is the last document that we set up from the previous example. And the same thing that we did here, we're going to do here. We're going to append the results and set the last document as we do. All right, so let's build and run. Oh, we didn't finish it. Add the start after last document into here. So we're going to start after the last document. And again, it's optional, right? So we have this error. So we need to do this like if else statement. So we're going to say let last document else. Just cut this, paste it here, and delete this one. To run our app real quick. All right, we got the last. All right, we got the first 10, and now we need to get the next 10. And so let's go back to our view. Let's go to the UI. Where are our products? So we have an array of products here, right? And what we're going to say is if let product, so the product we're looping on, if it is equal to the view model dot product dot last, the last object, the last item in our array, let's put a spinner on the screen, so a progress view. Sorry, this is if product is equal to the last one. And we actually cannot set two products equal to each other because product does not conform to equatable. So we could say we could do it by ID. We could say if the product.id is equal to the last dot product ID, or we can go to our product object, and we can conform to equatable. So we want to be able to set two products equal to each other or not, and we now need to tell it. How are we going to determine if two products are equal to each other? And so we'll set. And so I think it's LHS. And so the equatable protocol has a function in it that is, it looks like this, LHS. It's a static func that has the left-hand side and the right-hand side, each of the same type that were inside. So that function should look like the static LHS. My autocompletion is not working. This, I think, is what it looks like. Should be what it looks like, where we have product on the left, product right. So if we have a function where we are comparing the left, so here we have a function where we are comparing one product to another product. So we're going to set them is equal to, right? So the double equal sign right here is the same one that we're going to use in our code right now. And we're saying is equal to means if you take this product and you take this product and you compare them like this, we're going to say if they're equal or not. And so left-hand side is going to be the first product. And what we're going to say is if two products have the same ID, we're going to make them equal to each other. So we'll say left-hand side dot ID is equal to the right-hand side dot ID. So if two products have the same ID, we're going to set them equal to each other. When we make these, we need to be careful, right? There could be a situation if we did, let's say if we did left-hand side title is equal to right-hand side dot title. Imagine we had two products that had maybe different IDs but the same title. This function would now think that both of those are the same product, when really, obviously, they're not. That's why we're going to do it by ID. If your product conformed to hashable, you could also add in here like the hash value. So if two products have the same hash value, they would be equal to each other. But we're just going to do ID for now, which will work. And go back to our products view. And this should now go away. And a list, I believe, is lazy. So the objects only load when they come onto the screen. So I'm going to add an onAppear here. OnAppear on this progress view. I'm just going to put out maybe progress view appear. Let's run this. Let's run the app real quick on a simulator. All right. So did progress view appear yet? No, it looks like it didn't, which is good. When I scroll down, eventually, right before I get to the last item, progress view appeared. We can't actually see it, but it got drawn onto the screen right now, and it's actually right there. Okay, so it appears basically right before it comes onto the screen, which is awesome. And so now all we're going to do is call our function to fetch more products when that last cell appears. It's that simple. So when this appears, we're going to very simply say view model dot get product. Is that our function, get product? Yeah, get products takes into account everything in the last document. Cool. Let's run it one more time. All right, we got the first 10, and now it should appear. And look at that, it fetched the next 10 literally immediately. I got rid of the print statement, so That's why I didn't print to the console, but we now get the next 10 and then we got the next 10, just like that. So just that simple. And now we're at the bottom of the query, so it's just blank here. But it is that simple, right? So we did pagination, and it literally is loading in real time as we scroll through the list. So this is really handy, like the Instagram feed, right? The Instagram feed doesn't load a million posts when you open your Instagram app. It's going to load the first 10, 20, and then as you get towards the bottom of your feed, it's going to load a bunch more. And that's why it seems like it's a never-ending feed, but really it's just using pagination. There's the first query, and then it's querying after that, and it's querying after that, and so on and so forth. And, you know, you could even get more specific in your app. I've done some apps where instead of putting this on like the last object, maybe you put it on 5 from the last object, so there's even more time that it's loading before the user gets to it. Different things like that you can do to optimize your queries. A couple things before we wrap up. So these documents are now being, every time we do this query, no matter which of the queries that we execute, we're saving that last document. And that works, but what happens if we start changing the query that we're running? Well, every time we change these queries now, we're going to have the last document from the previous query, and we're appending to the end of the array, which is not what we want. So when we change this filter in this category, so I think it's filter selected, we're also going to reset the query. So we're going to say, so when we change the filter, we're going to set, so when we change the filter, before we call get products, we're going to say self dot this array, we're going to set it equal to a blank array. And we'll say self dot last document equal to nil. So kind of just reset everything when we change the filters. And we do the same thing for the category option now. Before we call get products, we're going to do that here. Let's run this one more time. Sweet, we're using pagination, this is working. And now if I come back up and I change the filter, it should restart. So now I got a brand new query and we're back to our pagination, which will still work on this new query, which is really cool. Change the category here and we're back to the top. I think this is working. All right, and it looks like it is working. Let's try a sort. That seems to be working. Let's come up here to category. And maybe there's no more objects in this query. I'm going to scroll up and then I'm going to scroll down, and I notice there's a bug here that now there's multiple of the same object in the array. We can see that, right? This OPPOF. You can see it here as well. So we want to debug that real quick, and it must have something to do with our new loading logic here. So what we're going to do is, let's just put a print statement for the onAppear when we call this. We'll say print be fetching, let's say fetching more product, so that we know when this happens. Let's also put a print statement in our get products. Let's just print the last document so that we can see what the last document that it is before it's fetching. And print here last doc. And then here, let's also just put a print of return doc, and we'll print out. All right, let's just look at this real quick. I think the problem is going to have to do with the query that returns no results, probably causing the bug, because it only happens when because it only happens when we have those filters on. Let's go to laptops. All right. Oh, I think I see it already. All right, so I scroll down, and it looks like when this appeared on the screen, the last document, the returned doc, is nil. So in our failed query, the returned doc was nil, and we set the value of the returned doc up here back to nil. So then when we went to fetch it again, it was nil, and it refetched from the original, which is a problem. So what we actually want to do here, I think very simple. All we can do is just, we'll say let last document, because this is coming back as an optional. We'll say if let last document, and then we'll set it. So if it returns as nil, we don't actually replace our local document. I think that'll fix it. But we can also do some sort of logic where it's like, if this fails and returns no results, we stop loading and we don't let the app load any more data for that query. but I think this will fix it for now. Yeah, awesome. Our bug is gone, and that's it. And now we can do all this sorting, this filtering, and pagination all at the same time. Go back to our origin state. Sweet. No bugs coming out here. I'm going to delete some of these comments, clean up our code. We are good coders. We are good devs, making nice, clean code across this bootcamp. And I got a couple things I want to clear up before we finish this video. All right, where are we? Firstly, let's go back to our getProducts function. And we streamlined all of this query stuff, which is awesome, by the way. Great job, guys. But I don't like this. Why do I have to switch on this? It's because this start after last document is optional. Right, it is not optional, sorry. So if I look at start after, it is. This array of any is not optional. And so just like we did with our get documents where we created a custom function, let's do that for this start after. And come down here, and it's an extension of query. Again, just remember, all of these are now returning a query. So we're going to extend that query that we're returning. And I want to use the same syntax as this start after last dot. Come down here, create a function real quick. And if I look at this start function real quick, if I say .start, if I look at that, I say start after document, it is a document snapshot that returns a query. And so here, let's create a function start after document with a document snapshot. But let's make this one optional because that's what we actually have, and return a query in the bracket. All right, and so in here we're going to say if this will be our last document. So that same logic we have here, if let last document. If we have that document, we return the same query with this modifier. And if we don't, we turn the query as is. So here, if let last document, so if we have the last document, we return self, which is the query, with a start after. And we'll put in the last document. And we'll say else. If we don't have the last document, we're just going to return the query as is. And we want to return these, of course. Sorry. All right. And so this is looking a little bit better now. And then we can go even further and just change this to a guard. So we can say guard let last document else. So if we don't have last document, we'll return self. And otherwise, we will return start after last document. And I'll just one line this. So we have super sleek code. Awesome. Now we can use this in our code and we don't need to do that if else every time. Coming up here, we're just going to return try await query dot start after. It looks like maybe it's an ambiguous use. Let's change the syntax of our function so that we know which one we're calling. Let's change it to maybe start optionally, maybe. Probably could use a better name here, but start optionally after the document. So we know which one we're calling now. So here we're going to do start optionally after the last document, and then pass in our get document snapshot. The code's even cleaner now. Go ahead and run this. Make sure it still works before we move on. Still working. Cool. And the last and final thing in this video is looking at an aggregation. So right now we are limiting to 10, which is probably a good number based on our UI. But you could imagine situations in your app where you have all of this code, but some collections have 1 million items and some collections have 10 items, right? And a small collection, if it only has 5, 10, 20 items, you might not want to do any sort of limiting. You might want to just fetch all of the items in that collection, call it a day because it makes your life easier and it's not going to cause any problems on your app. But the question becomes, how does the app know if a collection has 10 documents or 1,000,000 documents. And what we could do is call a query to get all the products in the collection and get all of the products in the collection. And then we can do, get our array of products and call count. But what that's going to require us to do is actually fetch all of those documents and then count them up. And so the whole point of this is that we don't have to fetch all of the documents. So then the question is, all right, so how do we find out how many documents are in that collection without actually fetching all of the documents in that collection? Luckily, thankfully, Firebase actually gives us some code to do that. We're going to create one more function here called get product count. Let's say get all product count. And this function is going to return us an integer, the count, and of course it'll be asynchronous and throws because it's got to reach out to the server. Sorry, func. Get all products count. All right, so again, we could call the products collection and then fetch get all documents and then count those up. But even better than that, we'll say let snapshot equals try await. So same syntax as earlier as the products collection, except this time we can just call, instead of get documents, count on the get products collection. And then the count here, and then we can call get aggregation. Cool. And so if I pull up the docs real quick for this, just to confirm, the Firebase has count documents with aggregation query. It says it right here. This allows you to determine the number of documents in a collection or query, and the server is going to calculate the count and return only a single integer back to your app. So this saves you on build reads because you're not reading from every single document, and also bytes transferred, so because you're returning less data back to the app. So this is going to be faster, it's going to be cheaper, and it allows us to basically, the server is going to do the count for us, and we don't have to worry about downloading all those documents. So we're going to do the server as the source, which I think is the only option. And then this is returning us an aggregate query snapshot. All we want to do is return snapshot.count. And if I look at what the snapshot.count is, I think we're going to get an error message here. Can't convert NS number to integer. And so all we're going to do is convert it, wrap it in an integer, use the truncating completion, and pass in our count. All right, so now we can call in our app something like get all products count, figure out how many products are in there, and then maybe use that data to determine what is the limit, the count that we want to put into our product, right? Or maybe it's nil, right? Maybe we want to update these so that we can just get all products at some point. Let's just make sure this works. We're not going to actually incorporate it, but I'm going to another func here, get product count. Task let count equals product manager share get products all product count. Just print out all product count and print out that count. Let's call this from our onAppear view model dot get all products count. Let's run it real quick, make sure that it does work. I think our count is 30. If I'm not mistaken. We need to try, we need to await, we need to rebuild our app. And hopefully it does work. We'll find out in 2 seconds. All product count is 30. Awesome. So now we can say if all product count is greater than 50, start using a count when we do our queries. If all product count is less than 50, we can just get all products maybe. Something like that. I'm going to comment this out. We're not actually going to use it in this sample project, but it did work. Now you know how to do it. And then that count works on any query. So this is the query that we were running here. But if we wanted to pass in another query like this one that returns a query, any query has the count on it. And we can even wrap that into an extension like we've been doing. So we could just come down here and say, create an extension or func, let's call it. They already have a count operator. We can call this aggregate count and return an integer. And we can just say, just put this in here, and this will be self query that we are extending. And then we can just come up here and call whatever query, products collection, and then we can just call this query call dot aggregate count. And this should be asynchronous. And bang, now we can scale this up because we have this aggregate count number. Because we have this aggregate count number, we can put it onto any single query at any time. And voila. All right, guys, that was it for this video. A lot of really cool stuff I feel like we're working on here. I love that we're cleaning up our code. Actually, this get products by rating, we could even condense this now that we have our custom extension, so that start optionally after, we could condense this into that. I'm not going to do it just so that we have the reference to this, but yeah, this is looking awesome. We are, believe it or not done with Firebase, or Firestore rather. We still have a couple more videos of Firestore stuff, which we're going to get into. In the next one, we're going to look at listening to the database. So instead of constantly refetching from the database, we can actually attach a listener and then automatically get the updates rather than having to refetch manually. We'll look at that in the next video. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. We are writing some real good code here, and I hope you guys recognize that. I mean, these functions are super, super powerful. The amount of functionality we can get when we scale up something like this is pretty insane, right? Like, we can add in so many different filters and sorting and counting and limits and pagination and scale this up to basically do anything that we want in our app. All we got to do is change out the query, change out how many we want, or the sorting operations, and go from there. Awesome. I love this. This is part of the reason why Firebase is so scalable, so powerful. Hope you guys feel the same. Thank you for watching. As always, I'm Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.